So I think we're good. YouTube's telling me I have an excellent connection, so let's hope that stays. Welcome everyone. We're continuing with this study of the Visuddhimagga, and we're now into the section of the book that deals with insight. The overall structure of the book, as I explained before, is follows the 7 purifications, which is a system found in Majjhima Nikaya, the Relay Coach Sutta, and then elaborated very much in the commentaries. And it's been very much used in the Burmese tradition, and I've been recommending people look at Mahasi Sayadaw's Progress of Insight to get an overview of that system. I've also did a video series earlier on that. It's probably find it on my site, going through the Mahasi Sayadaw system of the stages of insight. This chapter this week is chapter 19, called Purification by Overcoming Doubt. And in the system of the stages of insight, it's subdivided into knowledge of discerning conditionality, knowledge of comprehension, and knowledge of arising and passing away, which includes the 10 corruptions of insight. The 10 corruptions we're actually going to deal with next week, because the Visuddhimagga system seems to differ from the system of Mahasi Sayadaw and the Burmese tradition in this point, in that 10 corruptions are put over into the next purification. So we won't concern ourselves with that this week. This particular stage of purification by overcoming doubt is primarily the realization by the meditator of causality, seeing that things don't arise randomly, but they only arise according to causes and conditions. In Mahasi Sayadaw's text, he gives a very simple explanation of this, and the meditator realizes if he moves a limb, first there has to be the intention to move the limb, and then only then will the body move. So it doesn't move on its own. It requires a prior cause of arising of something in the mind. So Mahasi Sayadaw's approach to these is very much, to all these stages, is very much directed to practical meditation experience, whereas here in Buddhaghosa's Visuddhimagga, it's very much more technical and Abhidhamma oriented. In this chapter, he goes into an explanation of cause and condition. He begins by, from paragraph 3 on, next few paragraphs, he rejects the two possibilities that things arise according to the will of a deity, or the opposite error, that things arise without any cause, just randomly. He says, no, they always arise according to cause and condition. He says here, for example, that when a being is born, when a human being is born, there are 4 root causes: ignorance, craving, clinging, and kama. And then the 5th cause is nutriment, that arises after birth to sustain the being. He gives a kind of kind of neat little summary for three of these causes, or a simile for three of these causes. He says, beginning with ignorance as decisive support for the body, is like the mother is for the infant. Karma begets it as the father does the child, and nutriment sustains it as a wet nurse does the infant. And this, the reason this is called overcoming doubt, it's gone into in the next section, where he says this, realizing that things arise according to cause and condition, eliminates the doubt of the wandering mind that wonders, what was I in the past, what shall I be in the future. One sees that these things are not random or some kind of fate or destiny. They're results of karma. Then there's a few short chapters reprising that in quite brief form, the dependent origination, which was gone over in a previous chapter in great detail. Then he does some Buddhaghosa. He does something quite interesting, and I thought, in the discussion of karma and result, and he analyzes karma in different classifications. One of these is a fourfold classification. Karma that is to be experienced here and now, to be experienced upon rebirth, to be experienced in some subsequent becoming, and lapsed karma. And then he details the difference between these comes down to the Abhidhamma analysis of the Chitta-Vitta, which is in one of his favorite heuristics. In the Chitta-Vitta, the cognitive series, is a important Abhidhamma concept that explains in some detail how the mind processes information, how you cognize an object, and that the consciousness arises in a number of steps, a number of which varies according to particular cases, but the normal run is, I think, 14 moments. But some of these are classed as jhana moments. This comes towards the end of the series. Jhana moments arise associated with Chaitana, will, and these are the moments when you make karma. And other moments in the sequence are resultant, meaning you have no control over it. It's a result of past karma. But then you have these jhana moments. One of the details of the idea of the jhana moments is that they don't necessarily occur in each act of cognition. It has to be a clear act of cognition. If it's vague, then the jhanas do not occur. So you only have freedom of action in moments when you have some consciousness, some clarity of consciousness. And there are at maximum 7 of these jhana moments, and he says that depending on which jhana moment made the consciousness, it will determine when the karma fruits. So if the first of the 7 is the jhana moment that makes the karma, that karma is experienced here and now. meaning immediately or almost immediately, certainly in the present lifetime. Lapsed karma is a karma that has in which there has been no karma result. So it's some old karma that never has had an opportunity to come to fruition. In the karma that's experienced on rebirth is created by the seventh of the jhana moment. So that means in your next life, if it's the seventh moment, that karma will fruit in your next life. If it happens in one of the in-between jhana moments, like from 2 to 6, then it'll occur in some subsequent life. So this is an example of the kind of fine detail that Abhidhamma analysis gets into. Another analysis of types of karma analyzes it into four, a different four: weighty karma, habitual karma, death threshold karma, and karma stored up by being performed. Weighty means a very serious karma. There are and the example is given here of what are called the garu karmas. There are 5 acts. This is from the suttas. It's not even from the Abhidhamma. One of the suttas, the Buddha talks about 5 acts that, if performed, will be heavy enough karma that it will result in your next birth being in Naraya or hell, no matter what else happens. Ajatasattu and Devadatta both went to hell because they committed 1 or 2 of these. These are a murder of your father, your mother, an arahant, the wounding of a Buddha, because a Buddha can never be killed by violence, but they can be wounded. Devadatta wounded the Buddha in one of his assassination attempts. And the 5th one is creating a schism in the Sangha. So that means breaking away, a group of monks breaking away and starting their own group and refusing to recognize the old Sangha. So it's sometimes said, I've heard this said in Thailand, that it's easier for a monk to go to hell than a layperson, because a layperson has only 4 garu dhammas, the monk has 5. Then there's on the positive side, there's a weighty karma of mastery of the jhanas, which will guarantee rebirth in a higher realm. So that's a weighty karma. A habitual karma is karma that's performed by habit all the time, again and again. Small petty acts by themselves, but if it's done habitually, it adds up. It becomes more serious. And this is for good or for bad, right? And death threshold karma is if some memory of some deed you've done in your life comes up very strongly at the moment of death, and it can have a decisive impact on your rebirth. And finally, karma stored up by being performed. This is similar to habitual karma, but it's something that's done more deliberately. So on the good side, it would be like doing chanting every day, this sort of thing. And there's another one, the last one of these groups of types of karma is between productive, consolidating, frustrating, and supplanting. This is an analysis according to how the karma produces its results. Productive karma means that it generates existence in the next life of a certain kind, as a human or an animal or so forth. Consolidating karma by itself does not produce a strong result, but it influences other karma, making it stronger, adding to it, making it either more beneficial or more harmful. Frustrating karma is a karma that is opposite of a previously performed karma, and will have a result of preventing it from arising. So this is a way of, by doing good deeds, of preventing bad karma from coming to fruition. It kind of blocks, it doesn't eliminate the old karma, but it kind of blocks it or pushes it to the back of the queue. And supplanting is karma that, I'll just read the definition. It supplants other weaker karma, preventing its result, and usurps that karma's opportunity in order to cause its own result. So it's a stronger version of frustrating karma. So this is a bit of an analysis he gives on karma and karma result. Then he takes this analysis and he applies it to the idea of a not self. He says that there's karma and result, but there's no doer apart from that. There's a verse that I won't read the whole thing. It's quite long, but it starts out, there is no doer of a deed or one who reaps the deed's result. Phenomena alone flow on. No other view than this is right. Because it becomes, and this is one of the perennial questions that comes up, is if there's no self, who does the karma, who receives the fruit of karma? It's best to see this as an impersonal process. It's kind of like a natural law. The universe, the way I like to think of it or describe it, is that karma is like a conservation law in physics. It's a close analogy to that. The universe has a strong tendency to always zero itself back to the balance point. And when you do any deed, for good or ill, you're kind of sending out a ripple and disturbing the harmony or structure of the universe, and then it rebalances itself, and you experience the result of that. In the continuation of this section, he gives some analogies from how things can continue from one place or situation to another without the transfer of substance. There's the example of someone learning a recitation from a teacher and then reciting it. The recitation doesn't go from the teacher's mouth to the student's mouth, but it's a continuation. One of these, he gives several of these sort of examples, a well-known one of one candle lighting another, but one of them I want to comment on because it's curious. It says, while the potion drunk by proxy does not enter the sick man's stomach, yet the sickness does not, because of that, fail to be cured. It's an odd thing that I think that's must be a ancient kind of magical medical cure. Someone else drinks a little bit of the poison that sickens you, and then they'll cure you. It reminds me of the idea in pre-modern Europe. There was something called weapon salve, or ointment. And the idea was that if you were wounded, say in a battle, they had this, the alchemists would make up this salve or ointment that would cure the infection in your wound, but it's not applied to the wound. You have to get a hold of the weapon that wounded you and apply it to the weapon, and it will cure your infection. I think it's the same kind of idea, magical kind of transfer by proxy. And again, there's and we see this throughout the Sutta interspersing of verses. Some of these verses are taken from the canon, and the translator Yanamoli will reference them, but some of them are original to Buddhaghosa. This one is original to Buddhaghosa, and it's talking about, it's a shortish one, just 3 stanzas, and it's talking about rebirth without a self. And one line here is of particular interest. It says, "They have no interval between or gap that separates the two. While not whatever passes over, still rebirth linking comes about." This is a commentarial position that has caused a lot of discussion. The in-between state, or the antara bhava, which is denied by the commentaries, and Buddhaghosa here and elsewhere in the Sutta, he states this quite emphatically, that the death moment is followed immediately by the birth moment. This is a distinction that goes against many other schools of Buddhism. Famously, the Tibetans have their bardo states, that the being wanders in between death and birth, and it's probably, or I would say almost certainly, in Theravada Buddhist countries, the kind of common belief or folk belief is there is some kind of intermediate state. And I've seen a lot of discussion of this, and there's a couple of good academic articles written that find references in the Pali Canon, in the suttas, that without stating it explicitly seem to suppose or imply the existence of an intermediate state. Then he talks about just to conclude the chapter, he talks about seeing the 3 characteristics in the process of cause and effect. The general theme of this chapter is the emphasis is on cause and effect in terms of karma and rebirth, which is quite a bit different than the way Mahasi treats it in Progressive Insight, which, as I said, is more practical and oriented towards practical meditation advice, because I don't think for most people in their practical experience in meditation they're necessarily going to get insights into karma and rebirth, but they will and should get an insight into the way the body moves according to the first arising of impulses in the mind, for example, which is the case Mahasi chooses to cite or emphasize. So this chapter represents the knowledge of overcoming doubt. And at the very end of this chapter, he says, it's quite a significant statement. He says that one who reaches this stage and realizes by his own insight that things arise according to causes and conditions and not otherwise, has overcome doubt to a sufficient degree that he can be called a chula sotapanna, a little stream winner. That is one who has not yet glimpsed nibbana. He's not a stream winner, but he's assured of attaining sotapanna. It's usually assumed to be meeting in this very life. Chula sotapanna is a commentarial idea. You won't find it in the sutras. And here's where the difference in the small kind of difference between Buddhaghosa's treatment and Mahasi Sayadaw's treatment of this section is has a little bit of significance, because I mentioned the 10 corruptions of insight, which we'll get into next week, but briefly what they are is that a meditator can have all kinds of strong experiences. So many of them are like jhana-like, or feeling very light and buoyant, seeing brilliant lights, feeling very joyous, and can mistake that for being enlightened, think that this must surely be stream entry, but it's not. And it's only when the meditator sees through that, sees their impermanent phenomena like everything else, that he's called a chula sotapanna. So Buddhaghosa puts that at a slightly earlier point in the progress than Mahasi Sayadaw. And he doesn't deal with the 10 corruptions until the next purification. So that's this chapter, and next week's chapter going on is knowledge and vision of what is path and what is not path. And it's dealt with in some detail. It's kind of a longer chapter, and it includes the 10 corruptions and the 18 principal insights. Those are the kind of important themes of that chapter. So I'll leave that for your reflection, and we'll see what we've got to address in the chat here. Okay. Question: if the things we perceive are not real, how do we know what an attainment is? When an attainment is real, do we not need to trust the experience sometimes? It seems like doubting all experience leads to mental chaos. Well, I think the big underlying problem with that, with questioning, the way you phrase the question is, you did put real in quotation marks, because what exactly is real? What does that mean? What does reality mean? It's not a trivial question. What we perceive is part of a process. Perception is part of a process, and it doesn't always invariably agree with any kind of outside reality, although it tries to. Right? If you're sane, normal type person, then your perceptions will be a decent reflection of external reality, but they're not external reality. We never really experience the external world directly. We experience it mediated through the senses and through perception. The attainment is different, because the realization of dhamma is direct and immediate. It's not an object that's processed in the same way as others. How do I overcome doubt born of unwholesome actions of the Sangha while being part of the Sangha? Well, well, that would be, you'd have to um, distinguish between the human reality and the ideal. It's not the human reality is not always going to live up to the ideal. And what does it mean to master the first jhana? Uh, um, to be a master of jhana means to be able to enter it and emerge from it at will, and to have control over that process. Next question. Let's say a person saved a lot of money practicing right livelihood for 30 years and steals it all. A thief steals it all. The thief creates bad karma, but if the victim wishes harm upon the thief every day, these thoughts repeat for decades. Can the victim create more bad karma than the thief? I don't know if you can weigh it like that. Who creates the most bad karma? There's so many factors affecting the weight of karma. But if he dwells on it all the time, that becomes a habitual karma, and it's stronger than it's much stronger than if he just has a passing thought now and again. If he kind of obsesses with it, even from a psychological point of view, you can see that that corrupts the mind. If you're constantly nursing old grievances. Next one. Does absolutely everything that arises have cause and condition, so all karma is deserved? I guess from that perspective, nobody's an innocent victim. We're guilty just by the fact that we're born here. Yeah, basically that's true, but you have to try and avoid this sort of moralistic language. The karma is deserved. That sort of puts it into kind of a realm of reward and punishment. It's more like, I like to think of it as a natural law. You're setting the conditions in the universe for your subsequent experiences. So you are the result of your karma, and everything you experience is a result of your karma. If you use that teaching to say that someone who is being abused or having a bad time, well, he deserves it, forget about it, that's an abuse of the teaching. You're not being compassionate. Do all 5 hindrances cause negative results? I was quite slothful yesterday. Yeah, well, you can probably directly see the experience of that. Next one. I think part of becoming enlightened is no longer seeing suffering as self-evidently bad, as the Buddha says in the Atthakavagga Sutta, to have no views. Ideally, one could burn alive with no suffering. Thoughts on this? Well, you could, if you're burnt alive, you would experience physical pain, unless you've got some kind of power of turning off your definitely physical pain. But there's a separation between physical pain and mental suffering. Like the Buddha had physical pain, particularly in the last year of his life. He had suffering from various illnesses, but he didn't have mental suffering as a result. Whenever we have a physical pain, there's like 2 levels to it. There's the pain itself, and there's which is ordinary course of things that's unavoidable but given. But then there's the mental suffering on top of that, which is like the internal whinging and whining that multiplies the suffering. As someone once expressed it as a Ohm's law of dukkha, that suffering equals pain times resistance. So if you have a lot of pain but zero resistance, then you have no suffering. If you have a small trivial pain but you have a lot of resistance, like internal whining and complaining, then you have a lot of suffering. Years ago, a friend told me that when the decision had been made, the doctors had her remove her father from life support. I heard that, my heart sunk. Does that lead to anatarya kama? I think we have to make a distinction, and this has been discussed quite a bit in terms of end-of-life situations. You have to make a distinction between active and passive euthanasia. There's no responsibility to necessarily prolong a life artificially. But it is, if you take active measures to end someone's life, that's an act of killing. Which of all 10 paramis you think is absolutely most important to practice in order to develop the others, or are they all equally important? In some way, they're all equally important, but I actually think, from a practical point of view, that faith or saddha is concede all the others. I think that's a very important one. I would say, that's just from my own observation. How would you reconcile the law of karma with the human species spawning from primate evolution? Well, there's certainly, I don't think there's any contradiction. There's certainly the idea is already in the Buddhist cosmology, the traditional cosmology, in the Ganya Sutta, that humans arose from previous life forms. Although in the Ganya Sutta, it's more of a devolution, falling down from a higher state. And the causes of the loss is always various kind of unskillful deeds by the beings, and so they evolve. So it might be in terms of modern understanding of evolution that lower animals, by existing and learning, they gradually they're making a kind of karma that will give them a better rebirth. What did our primate ancestors do to evolve into us? I will say, I'll say something, from my personal opinion on this. I think that there's enough physical evidence that evolution of species has occurred on this planet, but I don't believe that the purely materialistic explanation in terms of random mutation and survival of the fittest, I don't think that's a sufficient explanation. It can partially explain some things, but I don't think it explains many other things. For example, which is a very relevant to this discussion, is the evolution of human intelligence. I think it's not adequately taken into account that the large brain is a huge biological deficit in purely material terms. It consumes a lot of the energy of the body, and it also makes childbirth very much more dangerous and difficult for the females of the species than a small brained, small head animal. So human babies actually somewhat compensate for this. They're born premature relative to other animals, and then that requires then a burden on the mother primarily, but on the whole tribe community to state. So the brain is, in purely Darwinian terms, it's hard to really justify the evolution of such large brains. The large brains allow human beings to develop art and religion, complex technology, and so on. But in terms of selection of the fittest, once they were smart enough to outwit their prey and reliably catch their dinner, then why would they need to have more brain than that? You don't need to make beautiful cave paintings to survive. It's no really Darwinian reason for that. So I think there's something else driving evolution. And it may be that consciousness itself, or mind, is striving in a kind of, not in a deliberate, consciously directed way, but it's kind of an impulse of striving for a more complete expression in materiality of mind. So those are kind of speculative views. Okay, one more question here, and I think we'll stop. Is the physical body have karma when materiality is generated rebirth, like the Buddha had back on? Yeah, there's actually in the commentaries, there's actually some. I can't remember exactly the details now, but there is some discussion about the various physical ailments that the Buddha had. And why he had them from previous births where he did something unskillful. So let's stop there now, and we'll come back next week. And next week is chapter. What's the number? Chapter 20. We're getting like 3/4 of the way through the book. These are the chapters that deal with insight. In some ways, the kind of heart of the book.